Welcome everybody to another BDA Boxing Transmission. This is Mr. BDA with you, and in this episode we're going to talk a little bit about the welterweight division. Now you see, I used to post a lot in message boards back in the early 2000s, boxing message boards that is, and I was always up to date with a lot about fighters, you know, what people were saying. Nowadays I don't have that much time to post, but I still lurk in several message boards, not to mention YouTube comment sections all across different various platforms. And one of the things that I've been looking at is, and we've talked about this in BDA Live, where we do the live podcasts, and we talk about fighters being overhyped. Now, the promoters can overhype a fighter, which is understandable because that's their job. They have to get their fighter the most notoriety so that they can get the most money out of them. And then there's also fans overhyping a fighter. And we've seen that in the past. Sometimes fighters live up to the billing, sometimes they don't. Right now, one of the guys that was being overhyped a lot was Errol Spence. And I say was overhyped because after he took on Kell Brook in England and then took out Lamont Peterson, he's proven that he is legit. But there's still a little bit of overhyping going on where people think that he beats Thurman, he beats Crawford, he beats Sean Porter, he beats everybody easy. Alright, and I don't agree with that. But don't take my word for it. Let's see what the people are saying. So that's what we're going to do in this episode. We're going to take a look at overhyping a little bit. Also maybe the underrating. People are underrating Terrence Crawford. And I understand that. He hasn't fought at welterweight yet. He's going to take on a strong, young fighter, hungry fighter in Jeff Horn later on this year in June. So that should tell us a lot about where Terrence Crawford fits in the welterweight division, but we're gonna get more on that later on. First, let's go on to... Alright, so here we have... This is Reddit's boxing section. This one is from 2 months ago, and the title of the thread, or whatever they call it over in Reddit, is called Who Wins? Crawford versus Spence Jr. And the guy says, ultimate dream match for me at this moment in boxing. At 147, who takes it and why? Spence Jr. is a naturally bigger man and is riding a sick TKO/KO streak. Crawford arguably has the best ring IQ in the game besides Lomachenko and is relentless. I got Spence Jr. winning a late TKO in a war if they fought. His size and bodywork takes it. So then we have Chip Hazard says, I'd like to see how Crawford is at 147 first. It's a big jump from 140 and Spence could end up at middleweight by the end of his career. This guy's is a massive welterweight. Now, see, that's an interesting thing, he says. And of course, intelligent. He says he wants to see Crawford first. And we're going to get that when he takes on Jeff Horn. So that's going to tell us a lot about where Crawford fits in the division. If he looks bad, two things could happen. One is he's not a welterweight, which I find hard to believe because apparently the rumor is that the guy weighs 170 when he's not fighting. And it's not a fat 170. Apparently, he does have muscle on. But I'm here scratching my head. How can you weigh 170 pounds and boil yourself down to 147 without losing that muscle? I don't believe that whole thing about it, you know, him being 170 pounds of muscle. He must be a bit of a fatso if he's at 170. Anyway, but Chip Hazard makes a good point. Now, if he looks bad against Jeff Horn, maybe that's to Jeff Horn's credit. We don't know. I mean, listen, the guy beat Manny Pacquiao, and I know a lot of people feel that Pacquiao should have won. And Jeff Horn was allowed to do a lot of holding and mauling, but hey, that's the nature of the game. We gotta accept it, all right? So we'll see what that happens. Zulowski says Felix Diaz is the closest he's had. The guy who arguably beat Lamont Peterson. They came in at 160 and 161. Crawford brutalized him until the white flag came out. Let me tell you something. That Crawford versus Diaz fight was very impressive. Felix Diaz, Olympic gold medalist. Good wins over, what's his name? Sammy Vasquez Jr. Good performance. And then good performance against Lamont Peterson, who is a tough guy. And Crawford just took Diaz apart. Picked him up with nice counters, then started putting pressure when he wore him down. I mean, it was just a completely dominant performance. Now, yes, Felix Diaz was smaller, and Terrence Crawford knows how to use his size and reach, but I mean, come on, it's who else could do that to Felix Diaz right now? You gotta give Crawford a little bit of credit for that. But anyway, like I said, we had to wait to see what Crawford looks like when he takes on Jeff Horn. Pat Mustard's tool says, in situations like this, the smarter fighter seems to win for me. Spence is far from stupid, but his ring IQ is a level below Crawford's. That's another interesting thing. Spence has proven that he has good IQ. When he took on Peterson in his last fight, he didn't just walk through Peterson. You can see Peterson, what he tries to do in his what he's tried to do in his last couple of fights is box more. Try to outbox his opponents early on, and then when he wears them down a little bit, he tries to turn into the old Peterson and put pressure. Against Spence, he tried boxing a little bit from the outside, and from the get-go, Spence was taking little hops back and right back in, you know, in and out, and he was outboxing Peterson. He was getting out of range from Peterson and then coming right back and countering Peterson. And then when Peterson tried to fight on the inside, well, of course, we all know what happened. Spence, also the bigger guy, great body puncher, and he just brutalized the guy. But Crawford isn't, I mean, Spence isn't stupid. He knows how to box. The question is, could he handle Crawford's boxing ability? All right, so that's from Reddit. Let's go on over to boxing scene. Now, I like boxing scene, but I can't stay there for more than a couple, like 15 minutes or 30 minutes at a time, because it's so populated that statistically you're gonna get a lot of people that don't know what the fuck they're talking about. And after a while of reading, just your head starts hurting because there's a lot of people that don't know what they're talking about, and the comments are just way too out there. But let's see, this is from 2016, April 2016. That's almost 2 years ago, and I believe this was after Spence beat Algieri, and that's when the hype really started. So let's see what people are saying. Terrence Crawford versus Errol Spence Jr. Who wins? April 2016. Larix says Spence too big and just as skilled. Red Fox. Hey, is that the Red Fox? I don't know. Shout out to Red Fox if it is that the same Red Fox. Crawford easily. Terrence has very effective reach and incredible movement. Exactly the type of thing that will be Spence's downfall. Errol is brutal when a guy is in range and stationary. You can see him waiting and loading. I don't see him having the footwork that makes a great fighter like Crawford. Now, this was in 2016, before Spence took out Kell Brook. So maybe Red, I'd have to ask Red what he thinks now, or maybe he could leave a comment in the comment section and let us know. But I mean, against Brook, Spence did prove that he could handle a mover. The difference though here is that Brook, for as good as he is, you know, there's a lot of people making excuses for him, saying, well, he did take a beating against Golovkin and then stepped right in against a monster like Spence. There's also the issue of the weight. But my biggest issue for Brook against Spence was, first of all, it's a sensational win, but Crawford can fight using both hands, and he's a switch hitter. Brook, he can switch hit, but it's really the right hand that's his biggest weapon. His left hand is really nothing to be excited about. He's got a good jab, but when it comes to hooks, uppercuts, and other things like that, it's really the right hand that does it for him. How would Spence handle a guy who can punch with both hands? Keith Thurman is another guy that can punch with both hands. He can counter with the left hook. He can counter with the right, you know, throw uppercuts. I mean, this is a versatile puncher. Grandpa Bernard says, Errol is a rangier guy plus that jab. Crawford gets controlled by that jab, especially if he goes southpaw and presents jabbing friendly angles for Spence. You gotta keep in mind, this is 2016. Alright, this was before Spence took out Brook, so you can see what I'm talking about here when it comes to overhyping a little bit. Julian Q says, I don't know who will win, but I can tell you who will lose. The boxing fans, because it will be a long time before this fight is made. They will avoid each other for years. 2 years after, and that prediction is looking very, very accurate. Grandpa Bernard says, Spence will be seasoned by the time Crawford is a welterweight and ready for killers like Spence. Okay, then Grandpa Bernard makes a good point there. A good prediction. 2 years on, and we do see that Spence is an established welterweight now. Mike says, another fight that will never happen. Red Fox comes back to Grandpa Bernard and says, I don't see how on earth you figure that regarding the jab, especially when Spence's opponents only have success when they jab and move on him, and Crawford picks guys apart at the end of his range and jets out of trouble like a hummingbird. But I'll just say we disagree and leave it at that. Okay, so that's another interesting question here. We're talking about range. So if you go to Wikipedia, I'm not going to BoxRec anymore until they take off that feature that you have to sign in order to look at fighters' profiles. Screw that. I already give out enough information out there on the internet. I don't gotta give any more to more websites. You understand what I'm saying here? All right, so you see Terrence Crawford's, Errol Spence's reach, I should say, it's 72 inches. Crawford, on the other hand, 70 inches. And it's interesting because Crawford does look like he has very long arms. But then apparently it's Crawford, I mean Spence with longer arms. Very interesting. Very interesting. Anyway, let's go back and see what people are saying here. All right, so we were at 2016. Okay, jump forward to Terrence Crawford versus Errol Spence. This is from a 2017 thread on Boxing Scene. This was after after Spence beat Kell Brook. So White Willie asks, who wins this? Apologies, this has been discussed already, blah blah blah. John Locke says the truth by KO. He doesn't specify the round, he doesn't specify how. I think John Locke has to brush up on his philosophy a little bit. Vegimil, I was gonna say Vagimil. Vegimil says Terrence Crawford might be a big 140, but Spence is a big 147. When Crawford can't bully his opponents, I'm curious about what will happen. Again, this is all dependent on how Crawford looks against Jeff Horn. Because, again, we don't know about Crawford at 147. But if indeed he's a big guy, and he does walk around at 170 when he's not fighting, then maybe him and Crawford and Spence are really the same size. Mammoth says Crawford points, this is why I hope Bob makes the Manny fight. Bolio Dog says I pick Spence to win by KO. I give Crawford almost no chance to win. Interesting. Let's go to the underground. This is from July 2016, and this was after, I believe, again, Spence beat Chris Algieri. Grilly MG says, I think the ship might have sailed for the Lomarigo. Okay, boxing with Spence has a natural size advantage, but that's it. Crawford is more experienced and is more established. Spence looks good, but has some defensive issues to clear up. Alright, so let's keep in mind, again, this was before Spence took out Kell Brook and Lamont Peterson, so who knows if Mr. Boxing Wiz has changed his opinion. He continues saying, he looks good, I'm not putting him down, he just needs a little more seasoning. Crawford is just a little ahead at this point. This is an interesting question for you guys out there. Who has the better resume at this point? Errol Spence or Terrence Crawford? Now again, I know some people are going to say, come on BDA, is that really a question? Yes, it is a question, because Crawford, okay, he hasn't fought any welterweights, but the Gamboa win, the Beltran win, the Felix Diaz demolition, the Erijan, who was a good contender at the time and just didn't even win a single round, I don't remember, against Terrence Crawford, Victor Postal, I mean, come on, these are good wins at the weight at which Crawford was fighting. The other thing about Crawford is, I think he's got very good punching power, and he's going to retain some of the punching power at welterweight, because his punching power really comes from his precision and his hand speed, and if you're a precise fighter with hand speed, you can usually keep on hurting guys in higher weights. I'm not saying he's going to be stopping as many people as he used to when he was a lightweight or super lightweight, but you know, guys, you know, lower level welterweights, I think he's going to be able to beat and drop in the process, or maybe even stop. And I think he's got enough punching power to make Errol Spence or Keith Thurman or anybody else respect him. But again, we'll have to see. Cavi521 says, wait a minute, what is this from? No, this is a 2018. Did I already look at the 2017? Yes, I did. I picked Spence to win by KO, says Bolio. I give Crawford almost no chance. Okay, so there you go. 2018 now. Spence versus Keith Thurman. Again, Boxing Scene. This is from Big Papa Pump. And it says soon. Okay, that's from an article. This is from an article where Spence says, I'm going to smoke him easy regarding Keith Thurman. So Cavi521 says, it's kind of weird hearing a top fighter talking about beating another top fight and wanting to fight them when in their prime. This is not a pump at Mayweather, as I always thought he was not a natural welterweight, and show us how unbelievable he was. First of all, Mayweather was a natural 147. When you see him when he fought Judah at 147 in 2006, he was already looking big. The only difference is he started losing a little bit of that fat later on, which is bizarre also. Who in the right at 38 or in the late 30s starts looking more ripped than when they were in their 20s. That just seems bizarre to me. But anyway, Andre Parker says, a lot of people are underestimating Keith Thurman, but Thurman ain't gonna brawl like Peterson tried to, and he got overwhelmed. Thurman will turn it into a boxing match, and we know he's got the better boxing skills. Except Spence can really do something extraordinary to turn it into a brawl that favors him. See, Andrew Parker brings up a good point about Keith Thurman. A lot of people are underrating Keith Thurman. Now, there is the question about Keith Thurman not wanting to fight anymore because of the injuries. I mean, there's a lot of doubts on whether his heart is really into it. It's only been in the last 2 years where he actually took on top welterweights when we're talking about Sean Porter and Danny Garcia. And yes, I do consider Danny Garcia top welterweight, or a big name anyway. Keith Thurman, beat him. But it seems to me like a lot of people do think that Spence is just going to walk through Keith Thurman. I don't know about that. Dark Knight says, I don't think it's going to be easy. I got Spence winning this. Raves says, I think Thurman fades pretty heavily in the late rounds, especially when he tries to box and use movement. It was pretty apparent against Guerrero versus Porter and Garcia. Problem was, Guerrero wasn't good enough, Porter didn't have that technique to cut off the ring well enough, and Garcia wasn't active enough. That's true with Garcia not being active enough. The guy's a natural counterpuncher. So I don't see how that would work. Anyway, guys, we're running. This video is starting to go a little longer than I expected. I don't think we're gonna have time to look at more of this. You see all these comments that I had prepared here, but suffice to say, a lot of people are very excited about this welterweight division. We didn't even talk about Danny Garcia, Sean Porter, who sticks on you like glue. Andrew Berto, I don't know, no, forget Andrew Berto, but Victor Ortiz and Devin Alexander, they're still around. If somebody needs to stay busy fight, they're still credible names. Amir Khan is fighting 154, so we gotta forget about him. So I mean, it's a pretty good division between those four guys. We're talking Garcia, Crawford, Spence, Thurman. Oh, five guys, because I forgot Sean Porter. Maybe a lot of people don't even respect Garcia that much, but I tell you something. I think Garcia does better against Crawford than he does against Spence, because you saw how Peterson was pressuring Garcia at the end, and Garcia just didn't seem being able to last. If it would have been a 15-rounder, oof. But anyway, guys, that was another BDA Boxing Transmission. You tell us, what is Spence being overrated at this point, or does his resume actually back up the predictions that we've been seeing here so far? Is Terrence Crawford a credible welterweight? Will he be able to get past Jeff Horn in impressive fashion? Will Keith Thurman fight again? Is his heart into boxing right now? Does he want to fight guys like Spence, or is he afraid? I know I usually disagree when people say, oh, this guy's scared, that guy's scared, but we'll have to see. You tell us. Don't forget to subscribe to BDA. Don't forget to subscribe to BDA Live, our sister channel where we hold our live podcast. Don't forget to like. Don't forget to hit that notification bell, and we'll see you on the next one, folks. Take care. Thanks for watching.